It's becoming very apparent to me that things can turn around in a hurry for National Hockey League teams. The Florida Panthers were the best team in the NHL. They beat the Washington Capitals in the first round. Admittedly, the Caps gave them a lot of trouble, and then they got swept. Tampa Bay Lightning, second round, didn't really look all too great until Game 4 where they still lost, and now you have yourselves a team that is in such a difficult predicament that I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that the Panthers have been rumored to potentially be exploring. From the head coaching search, you see Travis Green popping up as a name that they might be involved with, and I know for sure, they're just scouring the market, they're seeing what candidates are available, they're interviewing whoever is there. But in isolation to me, just seeing Travis Green get fired from an abysmally bad Vancouver Canucks team that he coached, a team that actually was not that bad in comparison to when he left. And now this guy is potentially on the radar for the best team in the NHL from last year. That is crazy to me. However, Travis Green and Florida aside, that is not the topic we are talking about in this video. We're going over the goaltenders, because when it comes to who. Yeah, that's the wrong word right there. Who the Panthers have in net, there is a big conversation that you can have about who's staying, who's going, and for what price. Let's go over the two men in the crease right here. Firstly, you have Sergei Bobrovsky, 33 years old, 6'2", 183. He's making $10 million a year till the end of 2026. He currently has a no-move clause, and in the last 2 years of his deal, he has a modified no-trade clause. Bobrovsky this season had a .913 save percentage and a .911 save percentage in the postseason. He also had a .267 goals against in the regular season and a .270 in the playoffs as well. For all intents and purposes, he was the main guy, quote-unquote, for a Florida Panthers team that was at the top of the league. Now, sure, these numbers are not bad, but $10 million is a lot of money, especially for a team that does have the cap problems that they're going to have. You also have Spencer Knight, a guy who was taken by the Panthers in the 13th overall spot in 2019, just a few years ago, and he's kind of creeping into the position where he could potentially see a lot more NHL action than he had this previous year. He had 32 games played, a .908 save percentage, and a .279 goals against. He was 19-9-3, so he had a positive record over there, but it is interesting to note that his save percentage, his goals against, they were just slightly below Bobrovsky and what he was able to do. So, for all intents and purposes, you can say that these two guys were pretty much on the same level, with Bobrovsky obviously having the experience, the money, the entire shazam behind him, which allowed him to be the starter in the playoffs. However, with the conversations that have gone on recently about the Florida Panthers potentially shopping Bobrovsky, this is what Nick Kypreos said on the Real Kipper and Bourne show, Florida is pushing Bobrovsky hard. In terms of takers, who needs a goalie? And we are willing to hold cash back. And I'm told they're willing to hold as much as 50% of their entire salary on that contract. So, Bobrovsky, if you go by Kypreos' saying over here, is on the block, and the Panthers are willing to retain $5 million of that $10 million AAV cap hit. That's a lot of money. But if you go over to Frank Seravalli, this is what was discussed between him and Mike McKenna on a recent edition of the Daily Faceoff show. The article for this little video segment was published on June 16th. Down and out. How do the Florida Panthers navigate the cap crunch? It's likely that the Panthers will have 3 $10 million contracts in their hands by next season. How will they build around that? This article kind of goes over the entire scoop that was said on the video. It just transcribes everything in a very good way because it allows us to look at what the analysts are saying and read it on the screen. On Thursday's Daily Faceoff show, Seravalli and McKenna continued the Down and Out series, talking about the Florida Panthers and what their biggest priority this offseason should be. Mike McKenna says that Huberdeau is the number one guy. You also have coaching decisions that are going to be big as well. There's top talent there, etc., etc. And there is the conversation about trading a Sergei Bobrovsky. You've got big contracts like Barkov, the aforementioned Huberdeau, as well as Bob himself. Are you going to have 3 guys over $10 million on your roster? That's realistic, so you have to start looking at paring money down somewhere. And Hornqvist's deal at 5.3 really stands out. The conversation continues and they talk a little bit more about the Panthers, but I don't see how they can run it back with 3 players on those big contracts, and I don't know how you get rid of Bobrovsky because that's the one you look to get rid of, they say. Seravalli says this: Yeah, I was going to say, let me throw my hot take mitt on for a second and ask you this question. Would you consider trading Spencer Knight, given that he's such a valuable piece and that you probably won't be able to trade Bobrovsky? If you're trying to make your team better while Bobrovsky's locked in for the next number of years, no? It's a catch-22, Mike McKenna says, but no, I wouldn't trade Spencer Knight. My reasoning for that, and I talked about it yesterday, nobody's won a Stanley Cup in forever without homegrown talent. You need young goaltenders that you can have and develop within. Goalies that can be there for 10 years, that are going to win you a cup. If you've got to get creative with Bobrovsky's deal down the road, you've got to do that somehow. But I would be very hesitant to get rid of Spencer Knight. Now, Saravalli is not going out there and saying, oh, trade Knight, they're going to trade Knight, this is going to happen, Spencer Knight is going to be on the trade block. He's not saying that. He's just hypothesizing that, hey, Sergei Bobrovsky is probably going to be here to stay. That contract sucks so bad that it's going to be difficult to find anybody that is going to take it. And so, do you just say, screw it, we'll keep Bob on for the next few years, he'll be here till 2026 when the guy's going to be, what, like 35, 36 years old? We'll keep him till then. And because Spencer Knight is supposed to be a really, really good goaltender, this guy was one of the highly touted goaltenders amongst Wallstedt, Askarov, and of course himself in the late 2010s. Because this guy was supposed to be so good, why don't we just trade Knight so we can improve our team elsewhere? Trade Spencer Knight to a team that needs a young goaltender and get back a whole bunch of really good roster players that are cheap and that can help our team win in the now. Because, I mean, Bobrovsky, he played all the games in the postseason. Spencer Knight didn't even have an impact. So if you assume that he's going to stick around for a long time, that Bobrovsky is, you can debate the idea that Spencer Knight would all of a sudden become expendable. I do like where Mike McKenna is coming from, though, saying that you need that homegrown talent to eventually come over and transition into the roster in a way that helps you win. You saw Matt Murray take over the reins from Marc-Andre Fleury in the 2016 playoff run. I believe it was that one, I'm not too sure. But this happens once in a while, where you do have a number one guy, he's supposed to be the number one guy, you go into the playoffs with this guy as your number one guy, and then your younger goaltending prospect comes in here and says, hey, I'm here too, and I'm arguably as good if not better than your starter. Now, Spencer Knight is not there yet, but I can name a few examples where that was the case. You have the entire Roberto Luongo, Corey Schneider thing in the late 2010s, late 2000s, early 2010s, that's what it was. Yeah, that was a big controversy for a long time. And in a way, Vancouver had a similar thing with Jacob Markstrom and Thatcher Demko. Now, that wasn't directly the same. There weren't contract implications that were like Luongo's, but you kind of get the idea here. This happens when you draft goaltenders that are pretty good, they become pretty good, and it's unfortunate, but they get too good too early, which puts you in a position of concern because the main guy's like, okay, well, what's going on here? Am I going to be the starter or not? And to think, things could have been even crazier with the Florida Panthers had Devin Levi just stuck around. He was acquired by the Buffalo Sabres in the Sam Reinhart trade, and he is now doing extraordinary things in the NCAA, so that was another goaltender that the Panthers had in their core. Or at least the prospect core, right? You get what I mean. But for Sergei Bobrovsky, at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes if he does end up getting moved, because as Kiprio said, they're pushing really hard for this guy. If they're willing to retain 50% of the salary, I mean, $5 million AAV until 2026 for a guy that's pretty okay. I mean, he's above average for sure. .913 save percentage in 54 games is not something to scoff at, but he definitely isn't the Vezina caliber Bobrovsky that he was, let's say, back in 2017 when he had a .931 save percentage in 63 games played. He had a terrible year to kick off his Florida Panthers campaign with a .900 save percentage in 50 games played, and that was kind of signaled to everybody as the potential downfall, quote-unquote, of Bobrovsky. It's just that, of course, he bounced back, which is good for the Panthers because they needed that to happen. You can't be investing $10 million a year into a guy that posts up a sub-905. So talk in the comments all your thoughts about the Florida Panthers. Would you consider trading Spencer Knight off of the idea that Frank Saravalli pitched? Hey, Bob's gonna be here. It's gonna be tough to move him. Just suck it up, trade Knight, improve your team in the now, and try to make the Stanley Cup playoffs next season, or not the playoffs, make the finals next season and win the cup then. You're probably gonna be good enough to make the playoffs, assuming you handle your cards right and make sure that everybody else is still secure on the team. Also, for you knuckleheads out there, I know you're watching this video, what are your thoughts about Travis Green potentially being on the Panthers' radar? Oh man, it's so funny that I said that, isn't it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99, and Bye.